Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient.
Welcome to the Courage Checklist. I'm your host, Jennifer Chambers. Courage. We all want it. What are the things in our lives that we need courage to tackle? How do you find the guts to get the glory? How do you do the things you've always really wanted to do or be? You make the list. You check it off. It sounds simple, but actually doing the hard stuff, the soul-deep stuff, it's not always easy. Find inspiration, ideas, and companions here who also keep trying no matter what. Let's talk about what's on our lists, from giant dream to tiny wish. We share stories of triumph, struggle, joy, and yes, failure, but we keep going together. What's on your list? Hi, everybody. This week we're talking to Avril Brown. Avril Brown is the creator of the Confident and Thriving program. She is a coach, a lifestyle coach, and an author. She has a program that is a 5-week group program designed for women in all stages of life who desire to feel more confident, to pursue their passion, show up with confidence, and have the tools to not only handle the curveballs of life, but to find calm in the chaos. We had a great conversation. Some of the things I learned from her were thinking about reprogramming your nervous system, which is fascinating. A really great topic where she really understands the importance of remembering your basic needs, particularly if you're a mom or a female identified person. Remembering your basic needs and fulfilling those for yourself can be very difficult, and she talks about that. One of the other really great things I got was connecting back to what lights you up and how important that is. And the last tip I have from her is my favorite, where she pauses every 2 hours to take 5 breaths and recenter herself. She even sets a timer. So listen today. She'll tell you all about herself and her programming and her journey through confidence and with lots of courage.
Hello, we are so excited today to have Avril Brown here with us. So I would love to hear about you and where you are and what kinds of things you do. Thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. So, like you mentioned, I'm Avril and I'm in New Zealand. I'm originally Irish, which is why I've got a different accent than pretty much everybody else in the country. And I am now a coach and mind-body practitioner. I work with entrepreneurial moms or moms in business who are totally out of balance, who are in that place of burnout and just feeling like they're totally out of balance and they've really lost that sense of self. So I work to support them to rediscover who they are and to create that balance from really deep within. So it's the deep inner work as opposed to the just creating the external balance. Because what I found is that when we create that balance within, we create that balance without. So when we feel more centered, more grounded, more whole in who we are, that reflects on our external world. And that creates the long-term balance as opposed to just trying to change a few things in the external world. You continue to go back into those old states of imbalance again because you haven't done that deeper work.
How did you get into this type of work?
I got into it from my own experience, basically. I'd studied psychology in the past. I've read self-development books since I was about 14. I worked in the mental health field. And then I had a child. So, and my child was a firecracker. He still is a firecracker. but he's neurodiverse. And through his journey, it really brought up all of my unhealed wounds. It brought up emotional, like I'd suppressed my emotions from a very young age. I had numbed myself. I was really, really disconnected from myself. And that showed itself in over 20 years of anorexia. So I developed anorexia as a teenager, almost died, was told I'd never recover, and had it to a high functioning level throughout my adult life. I guess when I had our son, it really brought it to the forefront. Not that it got worse necessarily, but it just showed me that it was still there. It was still existing. I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I ended up going into this place of burnout because his journey was really intense. There was a lot of focus on what was going on for him. I just ended up burning out. And I realized that the anorexia was at the forefront of a lot of it, the numbing of the emotions and the absolute and utter disconnect from myself. And so I started to do my own inner healing journey. And that led me to discovering that this is what I wanted to do, to be able to share my experience, to be able to share what I had, and to be able to support mums to create this balance within themselves, because we influence the next generation. We are their main guides. We are the people that they model themselves on. It's a real privilege to bring up our children. It's not just something that we should, cast aside as just something else. It's a real privilege, but we want to show them what living really whole and what living like fully alive is, so that they can live fully alive. And the way we do this is by us doing it first. So it was through my own journey, my own experience, my education, all of that stuff that guided me towards wanting to do this and to support other mums to do this themselves.
How do you go about helping other moms? Do you have a program? Do you have things you recommend they do?
Yes, I do have a program. One of the main things I focus on in my program is nervous system regulation, because it's so huge, and that the emotional awareness, nervous system regulation, to bring about that deep internal balance. Because what I see and what was, happened for me was I had high functioning anxiety and didn't even know it. The world is really stressful now, especially in the last 3 years. And I find that most adults, their nervous system is frazzled. They're really dysregulated, but they're so used to it, they've come to just think this is life. So that is the foundational portion of the programs that I offer, is that we look at the nervous system, because if our nervous system isn't regulated, it's very hard for us to change our mindset. It's very long term. It's very hard to change our programming and patterning long term. We can do it for a short amount of time, but we quickly fall back into that old conditioning again. So yes, I offer one-on-one programs at this stage. I will move into groups later this year, hopefully. But at this stage, I offer really intimate one-on-one 12-week or 6-month programs, and we dive really deep. I'm trauma informed. So if trauma work comes up, we address that. We look at mindset, subconscious reprogramming, the nervous system work, and just giving a lot of it is the practical tools as well as everything else. Because, we are living in this world, regardless of what's happened to us in the past. We actually have to get on with our daily lives and be able to meet our own needs as well as the needs of our kids and the needs of our clients. There's a big plate for mums, especially working mums. There's a big plate for them to sort of work through every day. So sometimes it's the practical stuff. Sometimes it's the deeper inner healing that then impacts the practical everyday stuff.
When you say practical, you're talking about tools like yoga or breath work, those kinds of things?
Yes, I am. Real basic stuff of like mums meeting their own needs. What are your needs? Because so often we ignore the fundamental stuff like, have I eaten? Have I had something to drink? Do I need to go to the toilet? How many times do we put off going to the toilet because we're holding on. And when we do this, we signal to our body and to our nervous system that it is not safe for us to go and do that. Now, logically, we know it's safe. There's no tiger after us, but we're telling our body that there's something else that's more imminent, something that's more pressing that we need to deal with first. Sometimes there is. Sometimes our child has sliced their finger with a knife and we need to deal with that. But most times we're just putting it off so we can write another email. We're putting it off so we can, stir the dinner pot a little bit more. We're putting it off for not essential reasons. So we're signaling to our body that actually there's other things that are more pressing and we're not first and foremost on our list of to-dos. So there is a big component of the practical stuff of just, okay, what are your actual needs every day and are you meeting them? Looking at the basic needs. Other things involved like stripping back our daily schedule. What do we actually not need there? Because a lot of times we find ourselves doing stuff like scrolling social media. And we have to get really, really honest and really ruthless with ourselves. Is this serving who it is I want to be? Or is this just an old programming that is allowing me to get caught up in almost that self-sabotage or dragging me away from what it is I really want because it's easy? And so sometimes it's that, and yes, there is then the meeting of the needs can be stuff like yoga. It might be a walk in nature. It's not prescriptive for everybody because everybody's so unique. And so for one person, they might love meditation. For another person, their version of meditation is a walk in nature. For somebody else, it's, going just sitting on the beach. And so we have to be able to really get people to attune to what it is that really works for them rather than what they've been conditioned to believe they should do. Because, we're really conditioned. We live in an amazing age of information. It's fantastic, but it's really bombarding and it's a lot of noise that takes us away from ourselves. So I work with people to support them to come back to themselves and actually tune into, is this working for me or not? Is this something I like or not? Or have I been told that yoga is really good and therefore I should do yoga? But really, every time I do it, I'm kind of fighting it. But I'd much prefer a walk in nature. I'd much prefer to go walk in the bush or to go sit under a tree and read a book or to just go sit under a tree and sit there or to dance with music. So I love connecting people back to what it is that really lights them up because there's a huge relief for a lot of people in saying, oh, I didn't actually really like yoga. It didn't do it for me, but I felt I had to do it because it's a thing that you should do. It creates that mind-body connection, but it might not be the thing that you should do. So it's really tapping into what it is for us, who it is we are, rather than this conditioning of who it is we've always been told we should be. And this is where the information can disconnect us from ourselves again. And so when we come back to what works for us, the magic starts to unfold.
The incredible thing that I heard from everything that you just said was how impactful it is to create a container to listen to these women. And often moms don't feel like their needs matter. So creating a space for them to find out what matters to them. It sounds revolutionary.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
does.
it is. And the thing that I love to share with people, and this has been such a big thing in my life as well, because I started homeschooling our son last year. So like there's lots of balls in the air. There's homeschooling, there's a business, there's being a mom, there's being me. Is that when we meet our own needs, we actually can more easily and better meet the needs of our children and our clients. And it's something that we've been, once again, it's programming out there that moms need to be the martyr. We need to, give so much of ourselves and we have that mom guilt and everything. But when we actually, I know it's so cliche, but when we fill our cup, we actually have something to put into everybody else's cup as well. So fueling ourselves from the inside changes our whole family. It changes the work that we do. It changes our relationship with ourselves. When we look at the relationship with ourselves, we change our relationship with everybody and everything else. It's so big, and yet it's really hard to put into words the difference it can make it's this ripple effect, and we're at the middle, we're the stone dropping in the pond. when we look after ourselves, when we build and nurture the relationship with ourselves, everybody else and everything else that we touch in our lives is transformed from it.
Well, it's simple, but it's profound. It really is. What are the ways that you have self-care, and how does that look for you in your life? Supporting all these people must be difficult to also then make sure that you take care of yourself as well.
Yeah. And like I said, we started homeschooling last year, and this really forced me to get really clear on how I nurture myself, because, we all ebb and flow with stuff. But I noticed when I ebbed with my self-care, when I ebbed with really nurturing myself, it flowed on. It flowed on to, particularly to my son, to the relationship in our whatever we were trying to do with the education side of things. So what do? I have a morning routine, but it's not really strict and prescriptive. So it's very much, what do I feel like doing today? And over the years, I've built up this connection with myself. So some mornings it's a walk. Some mornings it's I'll climb the mountain. Some mornings I'll go for an ocean swim. And we live quite close to the beach. Some mornings I nearly always start with some silent meditation, because that just really tunes me into myself in the morning. And I always ask myself, okay, how am I going to show up for myself today? And it's not how am I going to show up for anybody else, because I know how I'm going to show up for them, but it's how am I going to show up for myself today? Who am I showing up as today? So that every morning I start with that question, because it just clicks my mindset into, okay, who am I? Just that consciously choosing how I show up on any given day. And then throughout the day, I try to be as connected as I can to myself. So every couple of hours, I set my alarm. Every couple of hours, I come back to sort of 5 breaths, just consciously connected them, not necessarily deep or, in any specific format. If I was struggling with anxiety or stress or something like that, I would make sure that I had my exhale longer than my inhale, because that's really good. Like in for a count of 4, exhaling for a count of 8. But sometimes all we need is that conscious connection to our breath to bring us back to the present moment, to bring us back to connection with ourselves. I always put my hand on my heart, because it just drops me out of my head and back into my body again. And I connect, okay, how am I feeling in my body? And it literally takes 1 minute. It's like, how am I feeling in my body? I'm connected to my breath. I'm in this present moment, right here, right now. I'm very safe. And this is me. I'm good. And so I do that every couple of hours throughout the day. I would try to be conscious and connected as often as possible through the day. So if I'm having a drink, I'm consciously connected to the fact that I'm having a drink. I'm present. So that will be, so it's the morning routine. Every 2 hours I do that. And then regularly throughout the day or throughout the week, I will try and do stuff that is fun. So sometimes that's involved with my son, because we don't always get time and space for ourselves. But if he goes to the park, I'll jump on the swing. I won't just sit there, on the bench looking at him. I'll jump on the swing. I'll play basketball with him. I will get involved and just let that inner child out. And then, like, on a sort of a regular basis, once a week or whatever, I see, once a month, I see an acupuncturist, I see a chiropractor, there's other things that I outsource. I will maybe go to a breathwork session or, consciously connect with other amazing, like-minded people. But the everyday stuff that I notice that is really important. Like I said, the meditation for me, because it works for me. Every now and again, I'll jump in and out of yoga. But for me, meditation and nature are my big ones.
The thing that I've heard that I liked so much about what you just said is, one of the questions that I often ask people is if routine is important to you. And I like that you have routine, certainly, but it seems like flexibility is paramount to everything that you do. And I think that takes a lot of courage. For me, it's really easy to follow directions and be very rigid about it, because you've got a clear path. But when you take the time to really ask yourself about what you need and to structure your day and your life that way, that takes a lot of bravery, I think.
It does. And actually, now that you say it, it's allowed me to drop into this place of reflection because I never used to be like this. I used to be so controlled. I used to be really rigid. And like that, I could follow routine really easily. But what I found was it was taking me away from myself, and it was taking me away from my connection with myself, because I was kind of following this routine and I never tuned in with myself to ask myself, is this working for me? Is this working for me anymore? Because, we change. What works for me today might not work for me next week.
Mhm.
And I used to be, that was easy for me. It was very regimental. I used to think I had a very, masculine sort of personality, but actually I've realized I don't at all. But I just was so in my mind that allowed me to stay controlled and in control. And bringing in more flexibility, bringing in more flow has definitely tested me, but it has allowed a much deeper connection to myself. And it has allowed me to feel a lot more free, a lot more liberated. And to feel like I'm living more authentically because I'm actually tuning into me as opposed to just going with what has worked for me for the last 10 years.
It's funny because that's kind of a watchword. Everyone talks about you have to be authentic and live authentically, but they don't give you practical tools to do that. And in our entire universe, we're not told to look within yourself and figure out what you like and who you are and what you stand for and what nurtures you. So,
Yeah.
especially as parents of any type, it's just so, it takes, if you're doing it to your fullest extent, you're giving a lot of yourself away. And then you have to be able to fill that back up.
Yeah. And you're right. We have been taught from a very young age to look outside of ourselves for wisdom, or, education, for the right and wrong, for people to tell us how we should do our morning routine, how we should live our lives, how we should parent. And this was so massive for me. And this is what I really love to support people to do, is to, when they connect with themselves, to tap into their own inner wisdom as parents, as business owners, as women, because when we do this, it's so powerful. I learned this the hard way with both my health journey and my parenting. And in my business as well, is looking outside of myself for the answers. My child would not perform compared, to parenting scripts. So I read so many of the parenting books, learned the parenting scripts, did all of that. My child would not. He would see right through it. And he would call me out and he would say, Mum, you just heard that from somebody else. And it was true because it wasn't authentic. And so he could see through that. And it was so beautiful for me. And I did this in my health journey. I looked to practitioners and to people to guide me instead of listening to my intuition, my own inner wisdom. And I got sicker and sicker and sicker, even though these were highly qualified, highly recommended, very expensive people. And they're amazing. But the lesson for me there was that I need to be able to listen to and trust myself first, and then be guided from that to somebody, to the right person to work with. But I wasn't. I was jumping and choosing that out of fear, thinking, okay, I need somebody to help me get out of adrenal fatigue, or I need someone to help solve this colitis, or whatever it was that my symptoms were at the time. I need someone to solve my parenting problems. But when I tuned into my own wisdom and I connected to myself, my body was giving me the messages. My child was giving me the messages. I knew how to parent my child. And it wasn't anything that I could ever pick up from a book, because the book is very generalized, and it might be incredible for the general children, but for your unique individual child, they have their own unique needs, just like you and your body does. And tuning into this wisdom is so powerful because it's everything. It then guides us to what we need to do, to what we need to access, because sometimes it is people outside of ourselves. Sometimes it is wisdom. Sometimes it is a supplement or a parenting expert or whatever, but not ahead of and above yourself.
Absolutely. And that goes hand in hand with really deeply listening to yourself. As you got to know yourself and through your journey, did you find that you learned better with hands-on things as a tactile learner, or by observing people? Were you visual? It sounds like you really had to learn by going through it and doing it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely by going through it. And trial and error. And that's why I love supporting people, because I can cut out a lot of their trial and error. But I think if I hadn't gone through it that way, I wouldn't have learned all I have. Because I've done so many courses, so many programs, read so many books, and so I've got all of the information locked in here, but there's a way bigger difference between knowledge and information in your head. And I see this with so many people. They can tell you exactly what to do, but they're not embodying it themselves. And the actual embodiment means that sometimes it is trial and error. Sometimes you'll try something and it doesn't work perfectly. Or it's an absolute disaster. Not only does it not work perfectly, it's an absolutely hideous disaster.
Uh-huh.
But that's how we learn, really, that's how I learn is, okay, I'm going to have to do this myself, because I can read it in a book and lock it in my brain as information, but actually embodying it is very different. It's the old thing about, you can hear about how good meditation is, you can talk to other people about how good it is, but can you actually sit down for 5 minutes and do it?
So other than the kinds of constructive books and programs that you have read, are there other books that are your favorite? Other books that you like to read or that have been meaningful for you?
One of the most profound books I read, and it's really easy to read, is called Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender by David Hawkins. And that was really pivotal for me in the starting of my journey, because, going back to that control and the regimental routine, letting go was very, very hard for me. So I felt like I was constantly in a fight almost with myself. And I see this a lot, in a fight with my head about knowing what the right thing to do was versus actually feeling into what the right thing to do was. I took about 6 months of really searching Google, trying to figure out what it meant to surrender. And that's what led me to this book was The Pathway to Surrender. It was like, how do you actually surrender? Because I hadn't, all my life had been controlled. It had been, this was the whole journey with anorexia as well, was the control. There was a level of, even though I was incredibly out of control and I was totally controlled by that illness, my everyday life was very controlled. And in my parenting, I tried the control thing, and even in my business, and it just doesn't work. You can't control other things and other people outside of ourselves. And that book really supported me in just that letting go process. And it was definitely, like I said, I've read many, many, many self-help, philosophical, psychological books, anything for self-development. I love them. But this was the first book that allowed me to drop into, okay, it's really simple. It's actually so much simpler. And that's one of the things that I like to say to people is it actually isn't as complex as we like to make out. It's really quite simple. Healing, parenting, running a business, finding balance is actually really quite simple. We just have to often get out of our own way.
Oh, sounds so easy, but
I know, but it's not. Nah, it's simple, but it's not easy. So there's a difference because remember, I'm 43. So when and our son was born when I was 34. So there was a lot of conditioning before that and programming for pretty much all of my life that told me otherwise. So that's why it's not easy, because we have to sort of unravel and peel back the onion layers that gets us back to the essence of who we are. But underneath it all, we are, we have this essence, we have this sort of core of who we are that has never really changed. And what we just have to do is peel back the layers. But the conditioning gets in our way. The subconscious programming gets in our way. The beliefs, all of the things that tell us it should be hard. And, once again, with all of this self-development, people get so drawn into, there's so many different things I could do. So I need to look at trauma, and I need to look at this, and I need to look at this, and I need to look at this. But actually, what I've found in my journey and what I've seen in so many of my clients is it really comes back to how can I get to know myself better? How can I discover who I am? That connection with ourselves, being regulated within ourselves. And then so much of that other stuff just kind of falls away. It's that deep, because when we can be tuned into ourselves, everything does become simpler.
I can't wait to read that book. I'm very excited about that now.
Yeah, it is. It's like I said, it's really simple, easy, and it may not meet you where you're at right now. So, and I think that's a profound thing for me, was it met me where I was at when I needed it. And it allowed me to really move my life forward. I love recommending it to people because it really is so much simpler than we make it out to be. And I mean, the book doesn't cover all of that, but that's what I've gleaned from my whole journey, is that actually we can stop ourselves taking a step forward because we think it's too big and complex. But actually, if we come back to the fact that actually it's quite simple. I just need to get to know who I am. There'll be a ton of resistance there. There'll be a ton of conditioning maybe there. But it really is, that's simple. When I get to know who I am, when I really start, that's where we connect with our truth. That's where we connect with our authenticity. That's where we know when things are aligned or not aligned. That's where we know if things feel good or bad, where our health is, where our wisdom is. It comes from ourselves, and everything else, putting anything else ahead of that, is still outsourcing. Still outsourcing your power, outsourcing your wisdom, outsourcing everything, outsourcing your healing, outsourcing your parenting. Come back to yourself. And when you tune in from there, maybe get a resource that feels really aligned, but it has to come from within first. Otherwise, you're just constantly going to be trying to put out the flames.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. Thank you. It's wonderful. So how would listeners know how to get a hold of you? Do you have a website where they can find you?
I don't. I'm in the process of getting my website established, but I'm on Facebook just at Avril Brown, and on Instagram at Avril1Brown.
And then we can keep in touch there for your website and your later offerings.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much. This has been really a treat. So nice to talk
You're
to you.
so welcome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
My books of the week this week are both a fiction and a nonfiction book. Now, my nonfiction book I spoke about a little bit last week. It's called Just One Thing: Developing a Buddha Brain, One Simple Practice at a Time, by Rick Hanson, PhD, author of Buddha's Brain. And the exercise that I wanted to talk about was the practice of saying yes. He talks about a theater exercise where you say yes. And it's interesting. It's one of those where you have to say yes and improv what's going to happen next within that exercise. It's a great theater exercise. I did it too when I was doing theater. It's interesting. It talks about, in this book, the idea of saying yes to something that you like and thinking about saying yes to something neutral, which are both fairly easy. But then think about saying yes to something you don't like. And as you do that, think about how that makes you feel. You don't have to actually say yes to something you don't like. Just ponder that. And just think about how the things that you have said yes to, how some of them in your life have gone very well. Some have been disastrous. But it's interesting, the idea of saying yes and giving yourself the chance to make a mistake. So I really appreciate that book, and I recommend that. Now, the fictional book this week that I'm very happy to recommend is called The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. It is a wonderful book. I like to read lots of stuff about witchy things. I think that's really, really interesting. This is romantic. It's uplifting. It's like the equivalent of drinking a cup of tea. It's about the coziest book I've read in about the last 5 years. It's definitely a post-pandemic palate cleanser. There's a lot of P's there. But I just loved this book. So if you are looking for a book that will fill you up and make you feel great, then I recommend The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. Have a great week.
Sometimes we have to start over. Sometimes we have to fight back. Sometimes it's all